Welcome back to our Road to FM series. Just finished the second tournament of 2025, so I thought we could do a recap. We'll have more focus on the actual places we're going, the players there, and of course the games. So this tournament was in London at Raiders Court, and it was a really nice tournament. We gained around 8 of 9 Fide points, some interesting games. The tournament's around 5 rounds, held once every month. That's a really convenient and nice location. So it's 1 minute away from Ravens Court Underground Station, and got all the parks. Ravens Court's a really nice place. Got massive parks nearby where you can see people playing tennis, nature reserves, all this. But on the other side, you've got Hammersmith, and you've got all massive shops and plenty to do. So it's a pretty great location. Also run by Adam Ralph, who's a very good organizer. You also get 1 arbiter per section, which is good because with anti-cheating, one of the big problems when you're playing, say, a weekend tournament is you only have 1 arbiter for 100 people. They're all they're thinking about is, getting through the day. They don't really notice what people are doing. Whereas with a tournament like this, plenty of people around and quite small sections. I think the chance of cheating is much lower than other places, which is a very good thing. Negatives, always a lot of juniors at this sort of event. You can see both winners in the Open juniors. This has been an Achilles heel for pretty much all adults, really. Chess. You play someone who's going to be 23, 2400 FIDE, but you play them when they're 16 to 1800 FIDE, a year before they make the leap or whatever, but they're already that strong and be a real banana peel. And I think that's why, for example, I was actually second seed for this tournament, because there's a lot of strong players around this area, but most didn't want to risk playing these top juniors. So round 1, we faced Toby Fleming, and we got the black pieces, which is always annoying in a 5-round tournament because you're going to get probably 3 blacks at a minimum. And yeah, I was kind of aware that my opponent, I just had a really, really quick, because the draw only came up about an hour before the round started. It was on a Friday night. So, I just had a quick check online, and he doesn't have many games. So I just saw he's quite an aggressive player. But at the same time, I was kind of thinking this was a good thing for me, because maybe I can play my check perk without having to worry about someone analysing. So for those that don't know, I love this variation. Let's have a look at the game here. So the check perk, and I've got a video on this channel actually. It's actually my probably most popular video by far, actually. Sorry about the size of the boards, but yeah, they've got all the games on the chess results. Let's just do it via chess results. And it's quite an interesting line. This position is really hard for white actually to gain anything concrete, because the computer thinks white's doing really well here. But the truth is, white has to play really, really actively and aggressively, and has to know the line inside out, basically. And I find, I can't really do it as white. I've tried. I think I had a game against Jack Rudd a few years ago, actually, where he played against me, and I tried to play the theoretically best possible line as white, and I just ended up in a position that wasn't that great, and I ended up losing. So I'm not too afraid of people going into lines that are theoretically slightly better for white, because in general they're quite hard to play, and that's an ideal scenario. If you're in a position where you know the position, your opponent doesn't, and they're just sort of vaguely holding on to the illusion of, an engine telling them before the game that they're doing quite well, it's not going to help them very much. So, yeah, I was quite happy to see this. But It doesn't go very well for me, actually. Let's have a look at the moves. He played this h3 line. And this h3 line is very, very annoying for black. And yeah, it's probably the variation that's caused me the most problems, actually, even more than the f4, the 4f4 line, because I want to bring my bishop back to h5, but they can actually play g4, bishop d3, queen e2, and it's not that nice, actually. It's quite tricky. So I actually went for taking on f3. Now, this position is actually quite a bit better for white, theoretically. But what we've got here is a really nice center. So our pieces are actually quite ideally placed once we get on our bishop to e7 and a knight to d7. The main problem we have is just long term. This bishop on f1 here can come to c4, or this bishop can come to g5, so it's probably quite a bit better. But in the game, we actually went queen a5 here. And there's been a couple of games in this line, actually. So looking in League Chess, you can see there's a 2600 Grandmaster, Krasenkow. We've got games by Mark Hebden as well. And here they play castle queenside, which is probably the best move. In the game, he played bishop d3, which still is probably slightly better for him. And here, I think I just miscalculated. So I played queen b4. So the idea of queen b4 is to go for b2 and d4, and I'm trying to induce him into a mistake, because this is kind of tricky. Because obviously I'm the higher rated player. I want to get into complications, but this is not the time to do it, because he can actually essentially just sack the pawn here. So in the game, yes, I was most worried about a3, which I think is the best move, I think. Yeah. And actually, we can't even take on b2. Because if we take on b2, I guess king d2, rook b1 causes us a world of pain. So we can't take on b2. The entire premise of our taking our queen b4 idea is totally wrong. So back to the game. Queen b4 is just a bad move. Instead, we should probably play just bishop b7, something like that. Anyway, queen b4. And in the game, he actually took on e5. Now I took on b2. But he actually has king d2 now, actually. And this would have been way better for him. So wow, we're the equivalent of a piece down here. Let's have a look. D takes e5. a3. So this move would absolutely destroy me, I guess. I'd have to sack the queen. Because he's running just rook b1. My queen is struggling to get any moves. So we could have been in a lot of trouble this game. So imagine something like this. Yeah, this is nasty. We've got barely any compensation. So thankfully in the game, he didn't go for this. Instead, I think he castled. Which makes sense, because he wants to defend the rook. And so we took. Takes. Now at least we're a pawn up. Let's see what the engine, I think. Still thinks he has a slight edge here in the endgame, so he could take this. I actually thought during the game that this endgame would be good for me. Because an extra pawn, get my rook to g8 maybe. Knight on d7, control e5. So if I get my knight here, rook here, bishop e7, looks perfectly fine, but the engine, I think, sees some pressure for him. So in the game, he instead went for a sort of more aggressive approach, I think. Queen g3. Which in hindsight, I think might be the big error for him. So play bishop e7. Just get queen h4 idea at some point, maybe. So rook e1. So here we play knight d7. Just controlling e5. Maybe you can cast queenside if you have to. f4. So he wants to go for an attack. Castle. So now we're completely safe, and I think we're just better, but we're only a pawn up, so he's got the two bishops. So he's still got reasonable chances. But here he played e5, which is a blunder. It just loses a pawn in the end. So the queen h4, queen f3, takes. Now with 2 pawns up, he's in big trouble. So he's 2 pawns down, and he no longer has the bishop pair. So I think game's lost now for him, objectively. So just play rook d8. The problem he has here is the squares around his king are very weak as well. So we could get bishop d6, queen g3, and I'd actually say our bishop is stronger than his bishop. To b6, bishop f2, queen b4. Now you're probably thinking he's only a couple of pawns down. Maybe he's still got chances, but in a slow play Fide game between players over, I don't know, whatever rating, let's say anyone over 1800, this is almost resignable now. I think he actually played queen f3 here, and bishop c5 came. He's just 2 pawns down, so king h1. We take this, so he can't go the rook because queen takes e1. So queen takes, queen c4. So he's going to gobble up a2 or c2 if we can. Rook e7, potentially going for something on f7, but yeah, it's not happening. And I think he might have resigned here, actually. No, he's still got a few moves. He tried queen h4, so he's hoping for some tactical ideas. So if rook takes f7, then if I take back with the rook, queen takes d8, checkmate coming, which is kind of nasty for me, but it doesn't really work. So rook d6. So the problem he's got here is also his back rank is very weak. Yeah, I think he played queen h5, rook f6, takes, queen a1, no need to damage our structure, and he resigned here. So the reason why he resigned would be just because it's not just the fact he's 3 pawns down, but it's also queen f4 followed by rook d8, and he's just going to be a checkmate net coming. He's essentially going to have to play really defensive like queen f3 here just to survive the checks or something. So let's say he plays, I don't know, takes, check, king here, rook d8, and yeah, this game kind of hopeless. I'm just going to go rook d2 or something. Yeah, at some point. Obviously not now. Okay, but yeah, he resigned. But it was a really interesting game because that idea I did with Queen B4. See, I need to be careful about that sort of idea giving me a sort of like false economy type situation where it worked this game because my opponent didn't see King D2 at the end. If he'd managed to find the correct continuation, so even here, D takes, Queen takes B2. If he plays King D2 here, we're in a world of trouble. King D2 followed by A3, trapping my queen. Yeah, it's very difficult for me here if he plays it correctly. And so we've got sort of a situation where I played it wrong, but because my opponent also played it wrong, am I going to be encouraged to play equally bad ideas in the future? But then when I play someone who's much strong, well, he's like, say, I don't know, titled, they're going to find the King D2 automatically and destroy me. So yeah, so a bit of a 50-50 game for me, that one. Not too happy with how I played it. He could easily have won that. So I thought it was quite interesting in the other games that every single seed won, which is very unusual, especially with all the juniors playing. So here we have the other games. You can see Stanley won quite quickly against 1950, and you can see 1-0, 0-1, 1-0, 0-1, 1-0, 0-1, and the only people that didn't win or whatever took half-point buys. So they took half-point buys because the tournament had a Friday night round. So obviously if you're working on the Friday, it can be a bit of a drag having to go straight from work to a chess tournament, right? It's the last thing you want to do. So a lot of people just play 4 rounds, just play on a Saturday and Sunday. So we go into round 2, and this time we are up against Kai. So Kai Hinach is a junior, kryptonite for us in our rating because he's an underrated junior as well. But he is 2093, which at least means that we don't have to worry so much about our rating, but at the same time, he's probably a lot stronger than that, so it's not great. Yeah, so I sort of guessed. They didn't do the pairings till the morning, but I could kind of tell who I was going to play based on colours and ratings and who'd taken buys. So I did know I was going to play him. I had a quick look at his games, and honestly, I didn't really want to go into an open Sicilian because I noticed he plays mainline E4. And at the same time, he also plays Sicilian. So it's both colours, and yeah, it didn't seem didn't seem much of a smart choice by me to go into that against a player like him. So we're up against Kai Hinach, who plays the Open Sicilians both colours. And here we go for quite a quiet line. But I thought playing against really tactical, probably underrated junior, going for something like G3 against the Grinfeld was a good idea, but maybe it wasn't. So here, knight on E2 should be an improvement on the normal lines. So it says 0.4, so it's not too big a deal. So what we're planning here is to potentially put this knight on C3 and put the other knight on D2 at some point. So essentially, we're going to be rerouting these knights like crazy. So I was like castles, E5, which is the most direct move. You can also play C5. So here we go, D5. And he surprised me with this move. I don't really know it very well. So the normal moves are c6 and knight c4. But f5 was interesting, and I think I went wrong quite quickly here because queen b3. You can see Fritz 19 thinking it's the best move, but I just took. Takes the bishop. Actually, slightly better here. And now this idea, like I said before, about this knight getting here is quite cool. So we're about 0.7. And I actually thought during the game that this was a nice position for us to have because our pieces are on quite good squares. He's got kind of tied up this bishop on g7, locked in by his own pawn, and he's got some weaknesses. If I could somehow get one of these knights to e6, that would be very good. But queen d7, knight e4, knight a6, knight c3, and we can see these knights working quite well together. And we're actually we're a plus 0.1 here, so it's going quite well. King h8. Now queen b3. It's really interesting here that we're actually doing a lot better. We should take on b7. So this queen needs to gobble up this pawn on b7. But I was a bit worried during the game that if I did this knight's coming to b4 maybe. But it turns out we don't have to worry about that. Tactics are fine for us. So I played rook d1, which is, I think, a mistake. Not too big a mistake, but... And I go around this. I'm trying to get my knight on e6 here. Bishop h3, then knight e6. So we managed to do that. And I'm thinking in my head here, if we can somehow get this knight with that bishop, get a bishop pair. But he plays really well here. He forces the pieces off. And I really think e4 is a good move. During the game, I actually was worried now. I was thinking to myself, oh my God, this could actually be losing for me. The engine thinks we're still holding, but during the game, I'm really worried here because there's also ideas of his rook on f8 doing some sort of crazy capture on f2, then bishop d4, rook f8, and he's also got just pushing this pawn to e3. Queen c2 is another thing that potentially, whereas my queen on b7, it looks great, but it's not really doing very much. So all my pieces are sort of, in theory, they're really good. I've got the bishop pair, and they've got nice diagonals to go on, but it feels like tactically I'm in deep trouble. But anyway, I go bishop g2, rook b8, queen d7, queen c2, take on a7, and now c5. So I'm better now, actually. So here, he needs to play rook a8, c5, king h1, queen a5, c4. I'm struggling for moves here, so I go back to e1. I think time situation was about 5 minutes each now. So I'm just trying to pressurize e4. Queen d1, let's get the queens off. Won't allow it. And yeah, I think h5 is a very nice move. After this, we actually agreed to draw here. So the engine thinks he's slightly better. It's interesting. I thought after bishop e6 coming, that would be okay. But maybe not. Yeah. So let's say rook d5 here. Yeah, so we might slightly worse. I actually think, yeah, we agreed to draw around about this point. I think I actually played bishop g4. So we're into round 3 now, and we're up against Chris Davison, who's around 2000. His national rating is actually quite a bit higher. So it's going to be a pretty tricky game. So I opted for b3 here. I don't know. I kind of wanted to just play any old position and try and outplay my opponent here. It's a pretty big game for me in a tournament, actually, because having won the first game and drawn the second, this game, because I was my second white, actually, I kind of knew I was going to have blacks in the next couple of rounds. So I had to try and make use of the white pieces here to try and push for a win. I wasn't very impressed with myself in the previous game's performance, so yeah, we went for this sort of Nimzo Larsen. This is all fairly standard. And he goes for probably the best setup. Now here, I think d4, probably the best move for what he was planning, but obviously he can do a lot of different things here. It's all about equal. So the d4 blunts this bishop, and if I play something like d3 here, which is one of the lines, we've kind of got a sort of reverse Benoni where I've got my bishop on a really odd square. It's really, you'd rather it on the c1 and b2 because this pawn's quite safe. It sort of blunts this bishop. But I want to try and take advantage of this d4 pawn. So I've got this bishop, which, is putting some pressure on. For this pawn, d4 needs to do something. So he could take this maybe. But the main move is castle, and that's what he played. So we're actually following the main line. So we got a game by Ben Larson in this line, actually, against Tal. And we're following the exact moves. So that's pretty cool. Here, I think bishop f5 is the main move. See if we can add a Kapitsa so we know what the engine thinks. Let's just do this one. We use less resources. Yeah, so it's about equal. Bishop g4 was played. h3, and now bishop f5. Rook e1, queen d7. So he's pressurizing this pawn on h3, which is a bit of a nuisance. And so I'll play knight c4. And there's one game in the database here. Takes. Knight e5. Takes. Queen f5. g4. But there was a game with bishop takes b7 in the database by 2470. So we're actually unknowingly following theory, which is kind of crazy. So my main goal here is to try and actually win this bishop on e7. It looks crazy, but the main point is this: we exchange everything on g4. This rook can take this bishop, and he went wrong here. He should take the knight. So let's have a look at knight takes. Knight takes, knight takes, bishop takes, and now I was thinking f3 was what I was going to play. But apparently he can survive with bishop h3. And even though he's sacking the exchange, it's apparently equal still. He can actually, it might even be the perpetual coming. It's fascinating. So in the game he played this way. After queen f3, he was in a lot of trouble actually, because essentially if he takes, so let's say to this, I'm just going to win this bishop at the end. So one of these pieces is going to get lost. Probably has to play something like this, and then yeah, rook takes e7. Just it's not just the fact he's a piece for 3 pawns, it's the fact that these two bishops are so strong together. So in the game, queen d7 happened, taken e7, and honestly, now it's resignable almost. I know it sounds crazy, because he's got, materially, he looks fine here, because he's got a rook and 2 pawns for the 2 pieces, but d4's dropping, and this pawn on g7 is so pressurized, and this bishop is going to come in. Let's have a look what happened. Rook d8 takes, and rook c7's coming. This pawn on g7 is in deep trouble. g5 takes, and yeah, it's quite a nice checkmate here. King g8, bishop h7, checkmate. And if it'd gone this way, rook h7 just wins it. So yeah, all in all, that was a nice win for us. Probably one of the better games of the tournament for us. He could have held a draw probably if he'd taken the right way earlier on. So about here, he goes bishop takes g4 basically. So he could have forced the perpetual. But I think neither of us knew what we were doing. So that was a nice win, and this helped me, because this is the main result that's gained Fide points for this tournament. This and one other. Yeah, that was a good game, I thought. But we did well there. Okay, so now we're going into round 4, which is, if any of you have ever played in a 5-round tournament, know it's a key round. So it's on the Sunday. The tournament's been going on for 2 days. I'm on 2.5 out of 3. We had a really nice win in the previous game. Stanley Berlusconi is on the top board, and there's a whole heap of us on 2.5 out of 3. So I get Dylan, and I knew it was going to be a tough game. Don't let his FIDE rating of 1961 fool you. I think on live after this tournament, he's around 2060. So he gained 80 FIDE points just from this one tournament. And he jointly won the tournament. So this was a key game. And the crazy thing is, I had lots of chances, and so did he. Both of us should have lost this game. Both of us should have won. Maybe a draw was a fair result. But psychologically, maybe I shouldn't have played the Caro-Kann here. Maybe I should have gone into a check puck again, because I looked at what he played and I decided to play something solid. Many of you might remember the Isle of Wight tournament where I won a really nice game in this exact line as black. And so when I saw he played the 2 knights, I thought, yes, great, we can do this. He'll be a really aggressive junior. He'll try and push all his pawns, and yeah, we'll pick up the win that way. But I went horribly wrong. Like, I don't think my play this tournament was particularly strong. I actually think I played worse this tournament in the Isle of Wight, even though my rating performance was over 2200 here. But Um, if you remember here in my win at the Isle of Wight, I actually played knight c5, and my opponent struggled to do anything about my knight coming to a4. And we got a really nice position. But here, I played it a bit too solid, a bit too slow. I mean, essentially, I've got a king race here. We want to get on b2, which is his Achilles heel, and we want to pressurize the white king. Instead, I played these reasonable developing moves, but they weren't that great. And rook a6, a good example of that. Now he's better. He's 0.48 now. My idea was actually to really pressurize that pawn on b2. So I even had some ideas in my head of maybe playing e5 here to defend the d4 square. And then to maybe even double up on the b file. My queen and my rook go on, and then if he goes b3, go a4. You know, really pressurize him. But he ignores it, and I go wrong. It's such a bad move. Bishop a3. That's a bullet move. So my idea here is I'm going to basically just go with my queen and rook. So after takes, he has to take because there was his checkmate coming. And he can't move the pawn upwards because the king's pinned. But my idea is to get my queen to a3, the rook to come to b6, and the knight to come to... So this knight to come in, this rook come in, and they all seem good. The problem is his king can kind of run away to the king side. And in essence, you know, I've got very little here. Yeah, it's plus 1.7, so it's not completely lost, but I've got to be really careful here because his position looks really cramped as white, but if he can blast open these pawns, then suddenly this knight comes into e6, this knight can suddenly start, you know, jumping in. I don't know why I went there, but it can come to f4, his queen can come, you know, he can somehow get some real pressure going. So he played the right move, I think, g6. And so we've got 2 pawns for the piece, but yeah, queen g3 was the move for him. And queen h3. So I've got to be really careful. This queen coming straight into b8 here. Queen come to queen here. So I'm just going for checkmate here. If he goes king d1, we come in. And, you know, now we have a situation where both of us are really scared. Both of us have under 5 minutes now on the clock. For me, I'm really aware of the fact that this guy is like 1960. And if I lose, I'm going to lose like, what, 15, 20 Fide points. And he's played really well. I know he can win this position easily. And I think for him, he can see the danger. If he makes one bad move here, I'm going to win. And in a game, actually, I should have. So I'm threatening to essentially take these pawns on a3 and a2. Once he defends the pawn on c2, which would be checkmate. And, you know, maybe even get the a pawn rolling. A pawn and the b pawn could get going. And if he hasn't got anything on the king side quickly, you know, this could be a quick win for me. But the problem I have here is black is this king on e8 is very weak. So this queen can come sliding into c7 or b8. And at some point, he could do something, maybe swing this rook around from e to h file. So it's a very crazy game. He ends up going rook e2, which is a mistake. Rook takes a2, naturally. So we can take all these pawns. Now, here, I actually knew in my head what to do. I knew that I had to take a3. That was like my entire plan of going down there. But for some reason, with time running out, I just played a really bad move for K1. And I think luckily for me, he blundered here, but he played E5. Now, look at the objective value of the position now. It's -6 here. Can you believe that? -6 for me. Can you find the win here? Which I didn't find, which is kind of shameful, but yeah. So the move is knight h4. The win's on the spot, apparently. I guess the idea is just knight f3. The point is to get this queen on g5 off this diagonal to defending the bishop. So if I get knight f3 and queen f4, g5, then I'm just winning. And if he goes bishop g2, I just take it. So queen d2, g5 is apparently the optimum line here, and I'm just winning. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, I played knight e7, which is a bad move. Bishop g2, knight f5. So I'm planning knight e3. Let's try and get this block and checkmate on c1. Queen d2, a4. I think a4 is a bad move here. I should just take this pawn on a3. But I'm in my head, I'm thinking maybe I can play b5, b4 or something crazy like that and go for a quick pawn storm to try and queen, again, extra queen quickly. Because at the board, I couldn't see. At the board, I was thinking, what can white really do here? You know, is he a bit pinned? I mean, because his bishop on c1 looks so tied down with the queen having to defend it, and his bishop looks bad, his rook looks bad. Maybe I've got time to just, push the pawn, b5, b4, push, even get it to b2, who knows. But yeah, bishop h3, good move. Knight e7, and now rook e4, which I think is a key move. But after c5, I'd still be a lot better. But instead I played knight d5, which is a blunder. I thought knight c3 here. In my calculations, when I played knight d5, I thought knight c3 was just winning for me. I just thought knight c3. I've only got about a minute left on my clock. He's only got about a minute on his clock. And I just thought in my head, knight c3 for black here must win, because I'm going to take on c1. So I'll show you what I mean here. Knight c3. If he moves his king, we're taking c1. It's just winning for us. If he takes with the queen, which he must do, I guess, then here. And oh dear, I can't see a checkmate for black. His king's somehow safe. I don't know, and suddenly I'm in trouble. This rook, because my king is suddenly quite exposed for this queen and rook together coming in. So he could maybe go rook takes a4, queen a5. Yeah, so I've been in a bit of trouble there, but in a game, it was just as bad. So I played rook takes a3. So I waited to the worst possible time to play it. So now we go knight c3. King e1. Okay, one. Takes. And it's still only +1, but it felt like I was lost, because here I couldn't see him move for me. I was like, check. King e3, and here I could not see a good move for me here. So the engine is saying I only have one good move here, and it wants me to trade off the queen to queen e1. Which makes sense actually, because I'm going to pick up the pawn. So let's have a look. We go here. And it thinks that I might just about hold. But it's still better for white, obviously. So I've got 3 pawns for the bishop. But Yeah, we're getting into the ending. It's definitely better, but I have to go for it. Anything else loses. So here, Queen C1. I made a blunder. Rook B1, probably like the worst move in the world. And it's actually checkmate here in 12. Can you believe it? Checkmate and 12 for white. And he got the right move. Queen A5. So yeah, I can moan all I like about missing our chances earlier in the game, but he's got mate in 11 or whatever now, mate in 10 actually, and somehow we escaped. So played F5, only move, try and get our king out somehow, and here he can just take it. He can go E takes F6 on Pazar, and he's going to checkmate me. Queen D8, Rook D7's coming. There's not a lot I can do. It's mate in 9, but instead he got with the both of us barely any time. He went too fast. He went Queen D8, King F7, Rook D7, King G6, and Queen E8, King H7, and believe it or not, this is equal. um, what a crazy, crazy game, eh? And in the end, he had quite a nice way to guarantee a draw. So he took on G7, I think, and we agreed to draw. The main point is, if I do take with the king, you can just go Queen E7, and my king can never get out, basically. I mean, if my king tries to go too far, then he might even have checkmate. So yeah. Well, maybe not checkmate, but yeah. Yeah, something like this. And yeah, so it was a draw. And honestly, I don't think we can have any complaints about a draw that game because, like you say, it was 1 at the end if we'd really had more time. But at the same time, so are we. So there was a point in the game where we had a continuation that would have been -6 to us, and we blew it. I remember the knight H4 idea. Somewhere around here. Oh, here. Yeah, here we go. This just winning on the spot. Yeah, so I should have found that one. But yeah, probably a fair result. So now Stanley Berlusconi, the FM, won his game. So he's on the top. And there's a whole group of us on 3 out of 4. Guess who gets to play black against the top seed next round? Yep, it's me. So, Judgment Day. We're playing Stanley Berlusconi. So this is a player who I've personally seen grow higher and higher every single year. So he's now, pushing for IM, and he's head and shoulders the best player in the tournament. Fide Master. I played him twice before. Both games were drawn. Very good player. Did not know what to really play, but I've got the black pieces again. So double black. And we went for what we know, check perk. So he played F4, which is the most testing variation theoretically. But like I say before, I think knight F3 with H3 is probably, for me personally, the toughest one. But he played really fast, and I could kind of tell because, I've watched Stanley's games. I know him and his brother, and he rarely ever plays this way as white, like barely ever. He'd normally play this line with bishop on E3. I think we've actually played in the check perk once before, and he played bishop E3, not F4. So I could kind of tell he probably thought he was going to play me in the game before, and I could tell he sort of prepped something for me. So my spider sense of my danger warning was here, and I knew I knew I'd had to be really careful here. Because this is such a dangerous line. And if he's got computer prep here, with the black pieces here, I need to be very careful. So, 92. 92. Yeah, so I had a game at the London Chess Classic last December um, against a candidate master, Tamay Chopra from, I think, India. And he played this line against me. And it's actually surprisingly tricky to play against because in the game I played bishop g4 here. But let's put Kapitsa and see which is the most theoretical move. Just go for 14, just so it doesn't use too many resources while we're streaming. Yeah, so it thinks Queen b6, Knight d7 are the best moves, but Bishop g4's been the most frequented play. Took on d4, took back, and now Bishop g4. So, what's my big plan here? Well, the idea is, I knew that he would have expected me to play Bishop g4 here because I'd done that previously, and I thought by taking on d4 and Bishop g4 then, it completely changes the dynamic. So if he goes Knight e2 here, we're laughing. We've got a pleasant choice. So if he goes Knight e2, we got d5. I think it should be completely equal. And if he goes Knight f3, which is very logical, we've kind of got the main line of it actually, because Knight e2 isn't as common as Knight f3 on move 5 and 6, and but he's losing a tempo, so it's probably slightly better than the other lines. If I just play Bishop e7 castles, should be fine. Queen d2 though he played, and I think that's a really good find because essentially this bishop on g4, it is in real jeopardy here. H3 is coming, and there's a risk that if I play sloppily, like Bishop e7 here, maybe, he's just going to play H3. My bishop's going to be forced right the way back to, say, D7 or C8. And then at some point he's going to play E5 and then E6. And it's going to be very dangerous for me. Very dangerous. And yeah, we have to play very accurately here, I think. So I played Queen B6, which, yeah, is the best move because we just have to keep stopping him playing H3. So we're just ready to win this knight. And every tempo matters. That's probably the main takeaway of the check perk in the main lines. Every tempo, it really matters. Think of it like you would Yugoslav attack in the Sicilian Dragon. It's that important because if you just play developing safe moves, you could well find yourself in a lost position very fast if they know what they're doing. So Bishop c4. Now here, Stanley, we talked about the game afterwards, and we had a little look on our phones on the way, and Lee Chess really like Queen f2 here, and yeah, it's only 0.35, so it's not too bad, but yeah, I think Stockfish actually said it was more like 0.7 actually, or higher. So that was definitely the move. Queen f2. Then the idea of then playing h3. And we both agreed that white was better there. Bishop c4 though. Now I played d5. e3. So here I was expecting h3, which is the best move, but I think we can just about get away with cd5. And we're just about holding the balance. So we take here. Castle, play it safe. I was surprised by bishop e3 again. I thought h3 was logical, but I guess again I can just take d5, so it's fine. Bishop b5, naturally stopping me going rook e8. Now here, I think it's really important that we played knight c6 here, because even though rook c8 is a good move, actually no, the engine actually thinks rook c8 might even be better. Wow. So maybe I'm just wrong here. But I intuitively felt knight c6 made sense, because we have to be so mindful here. But wow, the engine rook c8. Let's have a look at this engine. Move rook c8. Queen b3. Knight a6. So this is what Fritz thinks we should be doing here. Yeah. Actually, the more I look at it, black might even be better. So yeah, that's crazy. So my thoughts with knight c6 was I'm not too concerned about a pawn here. He's got a lot of weaknesses on this e-file, so if he tries swapping off queens here, this bishop and king are going to find himself very, very awkwardly placed. So let's say he took here. So if he takes with the knight, first of all, we can take b5. So he goes knight takes, let's say, we can do this. And then we're threatening checkmate on e2, so he can't even do knight e7 stuff very easily. So bishop takes, obviously. Now here, queen takes c6. Yeah, so here we can actually take b2, but I actually thought during the game that I could maybe do this, but maybe not. I thought this would be... Oh, he's got knight e5 here. Okay. And maybe he's got a slight edge in that ending. Okay. So in the game, play b4. So he's stopping. So if he plays castle here, then I can actually win a piece with c5. And I'm just going to play d4 at the end. So he's got to do something. Rook e8. And we're about equal. And here, I think we were close to agreeing a draw, actually. I don't think either of us wanted to lose. And in the end, actually, I made a bad calculation here. I thought that rook takes e3 was a draw. So taking here, takes here, and rook e8, queen f2, knight f2, and we agree a draw. And it's correct that it is a draw here, but this is what we saw afterwards. There is a way that he could get a much better position here. So his first point is in this position. If he does something like queen d2, I've always got ideas like rook e2. And yeah, it's not good for him because I have so much activity. So rook e4, and it's actually very hard for him because I'm going to go bishop e2 at some point. Could even just take this pawn. So let's say c3, bishop e2. Can't take because of the queen on the diagonal. And yeah, I'm actually better then. So the move is queen f2. And here, after knight e4, rook e1. And the point is, I've got as black here, back rank issues. So I can't take this because of this. And yeah, but interestingly, it's not as clear as you'd think. So it's only 0.89 because even here, I have ways to play like G6, and I do have some compensation because of the control over the squares. So I'm probably going to pick up this A pawn at some point, play like Queen A6 or something. These light squares, but he is better. So yeah, we agreed to draw anyway at around this point, and yeah, I think it guaranteed him joint first, which was cool and very much deserved. So overall, good tournament, solid rating increase. They're monthly, so I might try and play the next one as well. Like the main game for improvement would be the game against Dylan, who did very well to win the tournament, but like both of us made mistakes in the middle game. That was a bit of a crazy one. Could easily have lost. Thank you for watching, and well done to Stanley and Dylan.